On behalf of the White Bear Lake Area League of Women Voters, I'm pleased to welcome you to tonight's event. My name is Stephanie McNamara, and I'm president of our local league. The League of Women Voters encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. We believe in the power of women and men to create a more perfect democracy. The League is proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government, and always working on vital issues of concern to members and the public. At this moment, I'd like to pause briefly for our land acknowledgement statement. The League of Women Voters of White Bear Lake Area acknowledges that the land we are on is the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homeland of the Dakota and the I've lost it now, Anishinaabe peoples. We recognize that Indigenous peoples have experienced loss of their homelands and threats to their culture. Despite these circumstances, the resilience of the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples is apparent as they reclaim their land and their culture. They are our neighbors, and they are sharing their stories. We pledge to listen, to learn, and to advocate for their rights. We invite you to join our work. Check our website, lwv-wbla.org, to find information on upcoming elections, candidates forums, events, membership, and more. Our local league is thrilled to present tonight's event, What Keeps Our Local Elected Officials Awake at Night. We have a unique opportunity to gain insight and learn about the challenges facing our leaders in our communities. So get your questions ready for the audience Q&A coming up later. We're thrilled to have Nora Slawik as our moderator. Nora is the Executive Director of Foundation and Institutional Advancement at Century College. She has an extensive public service background, including 7 terms in the Minnesota legislature, as the former mayor of Maplewood, and as chairwoman of the Metropolitan Council. Thanks for being with us, Nora.
You're welcome. And thank you, Stephanie, for that introduction. We are really excited for this forum tonight. I have the privilege to introduce the mayors and councilmen that are with us tonight. If you could kind of wave when I say your name, this is going to be in alphabetical order. First, we have Dick Brainerd, the mayor of Mahtomedi. Welcome. Sue Denkinger, mayor of Shoreview.
I'm the only female, but I'll still wave.
Okay. Thank you. Kevin Edberg, White Bear Lake City Councilman, Ward 4 and Chair of the City Council. Ted Kozlowski, Mayor of Stillwater. And Mike Kratchmer, Mayor of Vadnais Heights. So thank you all for taking time to be with us. I think it's a very interesting topic, right? What keeps our local mayors, councilmen awake at night? We're going to start now going through the questions. We have a number of questions. Your response time limit is 2 minutes, and follow-ups are allowed as long as they are short. And so we are going to start with Dick Brainerd, the mayor of Mahtomedi. What is the most common complaint received at the Mahtomedi City Hall?
Well, first, Nora, thank you very much, and thanks to the League for allowing us to participate, requesting it. It's a pleasure to be here on the panel with the other mayors and council members, and I appreciate the opportunity. In Mahtomedi, I did a little checking, as I'm sure all the rest of us have done, about some of these questions, just to see what we're hearing in the administrative office. And I would say that, quite frankly, we haven't really in the last year had a common complaint, one that I would really say is up in the forefront, and we hear a lot of. We hear complaints, don't get me wrong, and they are there, but we get them on things like somebody just calls in and says, somebody forgot to pick up my recycling today because they couldn't get their truck up the road. And because somebody was doing construction and they blocked the highway so they couldn't get through. So they didn't pick it up that week. We get those. We get the things that say, speeder, they'll call and they'll say the common complaint is too much speed on the roads. We're not doing enough to police the roads in the community. They'll talk about trash that people are leaving in their yards, or that some house is not being kept taken care of, or they want to know information about city ordinances, or why the city has so many ordinances, and why can't they play the rock band at 2 o'clock in the morning when they come and they find out we can't do that in Mahtomedi. So those are just a few of the things, but really, I don't think that there is one complaint other than maybe on the recycling that we have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dick. And then next we'll have Sue Denkinger, Mayor of Shoreview.
Okay. And again, thank you for inviting us tonight. And I am a member of the White Bear Lake League of Women Voters, so I can advocate that it's a great group to be in. Like Mahtomedi, we really don't have one premier complaint or one that's common. Year round, though, they tend to be around streets, parking, speeding. We have overnight parking that's prohibited in Shoreview. So we get a number of complaints from people who where there are people parking overnight in the community. So those are kind of year round. And then we have seasonal complaints. So in the spring, it tends to be about potholes. In the summer, it might be that a snowplow pushed snow or pushed over a mailbox or something like that. But I think year-round streets, parking, those types of things would be the primary one.
Thank you.
Sure.
And next we have Kevin Edberg, White Bear Lake City Councilman.
Thank you very much. And again, my thanks to the league as well. So very similar to those who've already spoken, traffic and speed tends to be the single largest number of complaints. The other relatively nuisance-oriented quality of life things, missed garbage pickups, or occasionally it's snow plowing and driveways being plowed in or whatever. Perhaps the one unique one that we do get, we find that we receive, and I'm saying this because of this group, that we're relatively safe in receiving phone calls from people who live actually in White Bear Township, and we help educate them that they do not live in our city, but need to take their, we'll listen, but the action needs to come from somebody else. And there seems to be a disproportionate number of folks who confuse us with the township. Other than that, life is kind of pretty okay.
Thank you. And next we have Ted Kozlowski, Mayor of Stillwater.
Hey, thank you all for putting this on. You know, I'll echo the comments the other mayors and council members have brought up. I mean, snow plowing is always a big thing. You know, we're a single hauler garbage community, so waste management is our only hauler. That was huge, right? When waste management was having issues and the yard waste wasn't getting picked up and recycling was getting delayed. I don't know that my phones rang more for any other issue, even through the pandemic, even through the social justice demonstrations. The garbage was probably the biggest thing I've dealt with in the last few years. But one of the things I wanted to bring up that it's a little bit different is, as far as official complaints go, it's very much in line with every other city. But I think one of the things, it's less than an official complaint, but development drives a lot of concern in our community. So someone tore down an old bank in downtown Stillwater and put up a 3-story apartment building. There are a lot of people on the social web and in the community, complaining, why would the city allow this to happen? Why we're ruining the character of Stillwater? So it's more of a lack of understanding that we really don't get to choose, right? It's kind of, zoning is our mechanism to say what can go where. And in downtown Stillwater, apartment buildings and condos and banks and everything else are allowed. And so I think it's some of the kind of educational things where people don't necessarily get that in the industrial area, you can have a impound lot. no one really wants one of those next to their office building, but zoning dictates that it's allowed, and even if we wanted to, we can stop it. And so I think those are kind of the more painful. They're not official complaints where they're calling City Hall, but that's kind of the stuff you hear about when you're out on the street or getting cornered at Cub Foods when you're trying to do some shopping, and someone's like, "Why'd you let them build that condo?" And I'm like, it's not our property and it's allowed. So it kind of is what it is.
Thank you. And next we have Mike Kratchmer, Mayor of Vadnais Heights.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting us all this evening. It's really an honor to be part of this and to get our thoughts and our experiences in these roles, a little more exposure to people who are interested. Yeah, I think the other elected officials have answered this really well. Most of the calls, of course, that we get are nuts and bolts. Things about city services, water bills, complaints about neighbors, zoning, of course. And I don't personally get exposed to those directly most of the time, but I do get quite a few emails from people who have a particular issue that they would like to, I'll be kind and say they would like to understand it better. What people really, but if the answer is not, yes, we'll fix that right away, that opens us up to a lot of good conversation. And for somebody like me, who's first time elected official, it's a great way to learn about all of the complicated systems and interplay of issues that happen on the city level. So it's endlessly fascinating and informative, and I feel like I'm really learning how to help people understand what city government really does, because there are a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good job, mayors and councilmen. We're going to move to our second question: are partisan politics impacting city meetings? And we're going to start with Mayor Denkinger from Shoreview.
We don't, in our city, we haven't up till now, and hopefully continue. We don't necessarily run as affiliated with a political party. And I know that's kind of unusual among cities, but we, maybe not, but we just don't. So in fact, I've had people when I've run for office who will call me and say, you don't have to tell me your political affiliation, but are you on the liberal side or the conservative side, or what do you think about this or that, including national politics. But they're not impacting city meetings, but I do observe that I think that the lack of trust and polarization at the national level and perhaps at the state level, I've noticed in the last few years that the tone of people who are upset with something is less respectful than it was when I came on council. I don't know if others are experiencing that as well. I think our school boards have. So I don't know if I could relate that directly to partisan politics, but it's a polarization and a just difference in discussion or how they might approach disagreeing with the city, or that I notice is different, not quite as respectful. We do remind people, and we've not had anybody interrupt, or disrupt a meeting per se, but we have had people that perhaps haven't been as respectful in tone when they're discussing or disagreeing. So I do think that's affected by partisan politics.
Thank you. Now we have Council Member Edberg from White Bear Lake.
Yeah, so there are minor influences that pop up on occasion, but so there are candidates from both parties that have affiliations and connections to organized parties and other things, and mostly that takes place in the campaigning process. On the council itself, not so much, people have, decision makers have their perspectives, their values, the things that they think are important, and try and bring that perspective into the discussion, and that's totally fine. But I don't know that we've experienced lots of partisan politics, like the mayor just said. We're in a time when patience and tolerance and the ability to listen well is sometimes strained. I don't know that that's directly connected to partisan issues. So or partisan affiliation. It's just it's a nature of the beast these days.
Thank you. Mayor Kozlowski from Stillwater.
Yeah. Excuse me. I think Sue nailed it. It certainly is undertones and how people are acting with one another, and the amount of decorum that we see in emails and some people speaking at our open forums, but it really hasn't affected our meetings. You know, I guess fortunately for me, it's a lot of that's been focused on our school board here as well. Like, they get nailed with that stuff in really severe, scary ways where our officers have to be present at those meetings, right? But for our council meetings, it doesn't impact us at all.
Thank you. And Mayor Kretschmer from Vadnais Heights.
Yeah, you know, the political environment is, at least from a larger perspective, can be pretty ugly and has been getting worse from my perspective. But one of the wonderful things about working in local government is that we have, I guess, officially nonpartisan seats, and our discussions are respectful. We come to unanimous agreements in almost every case, because we're all on the same page when it comes to really trying to do the kind of work that our community needs. And I work with a great number of city council people and our staff as well, who is really responsive, and it's a wonderful place to be. It doesn't look anything like national or even state politics.
Thank you. Mayor Brainerd from Mahtomedi.
Well, I think that the others have captured most of what I would say. I do believe that I heard in November and October, when I was out walking the 53 miles of Mahtomedi streets, and people said, "Why did you do that? You're running unopposed." And I said, that's how you become tuned in to what's going on in your city, and you find out what your constituents out there, if you are elected, feel about what's going on. And I think Sue may have said it, but or someone did, about the campaign process. I think I probably heard more about the politics on a national level and what was my belief on certain things respective to various things that are really being debated on a national plane, on a national stage. But I always felt that when you turned that around a little bit with the people that you're talking about, and you said, well, what do you think about the community you live in? It changed the tenor of everything. They like it. They like what we do. If they like your services, they're going to tell you. And I think, from my perspective, we've got a citizenry that is engaged. They do read what we do. They do understand most of the time what it is, and they're informed. And they have a desire, in my belief, to have our city operate efficiently and effectively and provide the services that they have come to expect. And so when you're talking to them about how the roads and how's the water and how's everything else you have as a service, how do you like the parks? Oh, we love the parks. Oh, we love the trails. It shifts all of the attention to what you're really doing in the local government. And that's the real pleasure that I get when I listen to the people out there talk about what we're doing in the city. And it's not about partisan politics, and it's just so much different. And that's the part that I kind of like about it. You can read about the partisan politics and everything else, and we do get it, as we've all said, on emails. People fire off things or they'll make phone calls, and the undertones are there. But when it comes right down to it, it doesn't seem like the partisan politics has a great impact on what's going on.
Well, thank you all. It's very interesting hearing your answers and get how in touch you are with your constituencies and while you're out there. The next question is, what concerns do you have about aging infrastructure in your city? And we are going to start with Council Member Eggberg from White Bear Lake.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that has become clear to me is how little folks know about the infrastructure that runs and serves the community that they're in. So in White Bear Lake, we have 82 miles of streets. As one example, we try and to keep material from getting in the storm sewer. So we are brushing the streets a couple times a year. And when you do that, it's like, can you imagine driving the street sweeper from here to Milwaukee at 5 miles an hour? That's what it takes to brush our streets. Or if you take all of our sanitary sewers and our stormwater sewers, lay them end to end, our pipes alone run from White Bear Lake up almost to 2 harbors. So that's a massive investment that most folks never see, don't even think about. And yet we try and maintain, we do maintain it. And I give a lot of credit to the professionals in our City Works Department. We have done things like coating the insides of our pipes to extend their life, prevent breakage. We see that in significantly reduced numbers of water main breaks, for example. I think the two things that I note that they don't keep me awake at night, but they are moments of pondering. One is water supply. We have our own water treatment plant. We in the last year or so have done some upgrades to the security, thinking about what happens if some crazy person wants to access the water supply and ... I'm not going to go further with that. The second more nagging issue is just financing public infrastructure. We've got about 2.5 miles of street that we have been working at trying to get it. It's the last 2 miles that is needing reconstruction. And so we're trying to figure out how to complete that. But those are the things that I think about.
Thank you. Next is Mayor Kozlowski from Stillwater.
Yeah, a lot of the same issues that Kevin brought up. Again, I'm glad we're all experiencing the same issues. Honestly, it's good to hear I'm not the only one. Stillwater is obviously an old town, an old city, and we've got some pretty, severe topography in Stillwater. And so some of our streets, like Myrtle Street coming into town, are really, really expensive to do reconstructions on. And so it's really the street stuff. We've got again, a great public works department and a great schedule based on a ranking of our, best to worst streets of what needs to get done in any given year. But it really is just the financing of it. My least favorite day of the year, my favorite day of the year is like lumberjack days. My least favorite day of the year is our street assessment hearing day, right? Where we get everybody that comes in to speak at the open meeting about, they don't like their street assessments. And I don't blame them, because sometimes they can get huge. And so that's one thing that I'd like to try and address. And that's really, really hard, is how we finance our street projects. We do a 70-30 assessment for the most part on mill and overlays and reconstructions. And sometimes those bills to our residents are really high. So that's kind of the main issue.
Thank you. Next, we have Mayor Kretschmer from Vadnais Heights.
Well, we find ourselves as a council in a pretty interesting situation in that there has been pretty significant delays in some of the infrastructure work that needs to be done in order to keep taxes low for many, many years. And so it is both our opportunity and our and our burden to figure out how to restructure the way that we finance those really critical services and make them more sustainable into the future. So it's both exciting and challenging to be working on these things at this point in time. And of course, when it comes to streets, I agree with Mayor Kozlowski that this year for us, for me, I'll speak personally, was a difficult meeting. And it made me ask a lot of questions. And I'm really glad it was a difficult meeting. I learned quite a bit in the aftermath. And I am really working hard to push forward a total restructuring of the way that we pay specifically for street repairs, but for many of the things we do. There seem to be some long-term inequities, and I don't think the systems have been questioned enough over the years. I think it's a good time to review those things, and I'm excited about the opportunity to make a difference that way.
Thank you. And next we have Mayor Brainerd from Mahtomedi.
Thank you. There are a lot of the things that have already been discussed that impact us here. But when I entered the council 20 years ago, we had no capital improvement plan. We were winging it pretty much. And when we had a pothole, you fixed it. And one of the things we decided to do as a council many years ago is we created a finance commission to get the word from the local citizens who felt that they could assist us. And quite frankly, I served on that finance commission for 6 years before I actually ran for election. And I can tell you that that has helped us tremendously with the citizens, because we have people who have expertise, not only in construction, in finance and auditing and things on that commission, who advise us, and they meet with us in joint situations. We decided that probably about 10 years ago, that the historic district of Mahtomedi was in bad shape. People don't like to hear that they're going to pay for things that are underground and they can't see them. And that's a tough part when you start dealing with water, and they can see the curbs and gutters and the roads, but it's the ones that are underneath when you start doing things around water retention and ponds. But we became very aggressive, and about 15 years ago. And it took us 8 years and a lot of work to do the whole historic district, all the roads, the curbs and gutters, and all the water mains and the filtration ponds, et cetera, but we got it done. And the other thing that we did, we said, we don't have much by way of, how do we know what our roads really are? How good are they? So we actually adopted a plan with our engineer, and we evaluate our roads every year, about every other year, and we rank them in terms of the need. And then it comes through the CIP process, and we have a 10-year CIP program now, where and obviously it can be adjusted every year and has to be. But the fact is that what we end up with is a listing of the roads that are in really bad shape, and we don't want them, or the roads now we look at it and say, what is starting to fall apart, and what do we have to do to maintain those so we can keep them active for another 12, 15 years without having to go to a total reconstruction or even a mill and overlay. And it really has worked, and very well. It does cost us money, and people who have talked about the fact of how they deal with the assessment is clearly on the minds of everybody. But we've established a policy on that. We communicate it to the citizens. They know right up front when we start a major project what it's going to look like in terms of whether they have a corner lot or not a corner lot. So we've done those kinds of things, and we have planned for that every year we get together with the Finance Commission as a city council. A couple times we talk about that. We bond every other year to pay for these improvements. And from my way of thinking, it works. People don't always like it, but the fact is they've had an opportunity to weigh in. And when they see the finished product, hey, the street looks great, curbs and gutters are fine. We didn't know that we had a bad infrastructure situation until they looked at what was the results were. So we're satisfied with that.
Thank you. And last for this one is Sue Denkinger, the mayor of Shoreview.
Well, I think we might be a little unique. We have a 40-year infrastructure and capital improvement plan, which really helps with our long-term financial planning, and also prevents, I guess, or gets ahead of some of the issues that we might have to struggle with if they came up in 1 year, for example. So we have that 40-year plan. So with that, we still have a water main. I think we had one break last year and the year before. You can't anticipate all of those, but for the big costs, we're able to, get ahead of that by having this 40-year plan. And I also was really glad that Mr. Edberg brought up technology or security, because I consider that part of infrastructure. In a sense, not physical infrastructure, but I think it's critical now, even more so for cities and other organizations to have that. So this year also, we have a very small but very effective and experienced technology department. So we also did upgrades this year to our network switches. We have our software upgrades coming out of the cloud and backup in the cloud. And so this actually in 2023, we invested quite a bit in our technology infrastructure. And I was really glad to see that, because that also is critical to avoid having some kind of financial catastrophe, frankly. So yeah, so we invest in that and watch that as well.
Excellent, thanks. Well, you all do not have easy jobs as we go through these questions and you're answering them. And so very much appreciate your service. We have another question here, which is going to be, what do your constituents ask you regarding transit, bike, and pedestrian options? And we are going to start with Stillwater and Mayor Kozlowski.
Yeah. So, we're a bike-friendly city. I think all of our communities, all the mayors and council members here, have part of the Gateway Trail, at least if not running through your community or very close to it, which is a huge benefit for all of us, right? So, so we have a lot of bikers in town, right? I think because of that trail, I think it attracts a lot of people that are interested in biking for work, to commute, for pleasure, for whatever. Stillwater, again, with the topography, it's kind of challenging. And so, we're always trying to figure out better ways to maintain, bike lanes within our city surface streets that don't have a trail. And that's been somewhat of a challenge, because we've got, like everybody else, we have county roads and Main Street's a state highway. And so there's all these different rules in terms of what we can do for marking and things like that. So, we get asked a lot what we're going to do to continue to make Stillwater an easier or safer place to be a pedestrian. As far as regular or biker or pedestrian, as far as regular transit goes, there's always a handful of people that come to the city and ask for some kind of local transit option, right? Some kind of bus on a loop. Again, even when I was a kid, biking up those hills sucked, and I was, 110 pounds and in pretty good shape. It's not getting any easier. The e-bikes make it a little bit easier to get up the hills, but it's tough. So the idea that you could, maybe get a ride up the hill with your bike or something, they want to make it a little bit easier to access downtown. But that's really it. The math on local transit really doesn't work. Like, we just can't afford that as a city to try and do something. But I'm open to being creative there.
Thank you. And very interesting. It'd be like a ski lift that would lift your bike up and you'd ride up the hill, something like that. But
Called chairlift for us. That would be great.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Next, we have from Vadnais Heights, Mayor Kretschmer.
So Vadnais Heights, in our most recent citizen survey, we found that our parks and trails are really kind of the primary amenities that people really enjoy about our city. And not only that, they want more and more and more. And I completely agree. Getting people on their feet or on their bike makes the whole community healthier. So we built a new trail this year in partnership with Little Canada. We've got another new trail going in next year, and we are trying to do some bonding for a really ambitious effort around Vadnais Lake. And so it's really important to our city, and it's also really important that we continue to expand the trails and walkways. Lots of the neighborhoods were built without streets, without sidewalks, which is challenging, especially in busier areas. So there's a lot of work to do, but we have been focusing on it, and I'm excited about the progress we're making. When it comes to transit, Mayor Kozlowski, I completely agree. We have lost the small amount of access we had to public transit since the pandemic, and don't see it coming back anytime soon. I'm personally trying to work with a task force that is reviewing the governance of the Met Council, because I don't know that they are really getting the message from their constituents, and they're not very responsive to their constituents. So the legislature is working this year to review that governance model. I hope it will make a difference in the voices of communities and individuals to be heard, specifically around transit, but lots of things that the Met Council does.
Thank you. And next we will have from Mahtomedi, Mayor Brainerd.
As far as transit is concerned and constituents inquiries, I'd probably take a little bit different approach there. We have had considerable transit activity, and not in the sense of how people are moved by mass transit, but by their own vehicles. And we've had turnback issues with it in downtown, trying to get people through. So when I hear from constituents that they're raising issues about how do we move from point A to Z? How do we eventually get through 120 by Century College, which is in the turnback phase now with the state and with the two counties and the cities? How do we get 244, which is a main thoroughfare through Mahtomedi, which the MnDOT and we are working on that as a turnback at some point in time, and all the nuances that are associated with movement of people. So it doesn't just evolve from the pedestrians and the bicyclists and the skateboarders and that sort of thing. It's actually how do we move people through our communities, and that I'm hearing more of because County 12 through downtown Willoughby and Mahtomedi was just done, and they're going to start again the rest of it this fall, which is a great project. But they're major thoroughfares, and the kids going to school have to cross those streets. People have to get out of their driveways. You've got churches, you've got businesses, all impacted by that. So it's a huge transit issue for us. The biking part of it, during the past few years, we completed the Mahtomedi section of the Lake Links Trail. And we're very proud that we've got that completed. In fact, we lighted one section of that trail. And a couple of nights ago, last Friday, a week from tomorrow, the Lake Links Trail Association held an event, which probably well over 100 people attended, to walk that lighted trail and see what it was really like. And people were out there actually with their dogs walking it in dark, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. It does connect up with a path that can go up and connect with the gateway, as Ted was talking about. We have that connection, and people love that. And so anything we can do to continue to expand the pedestrians and getting them out on those, and it actually has a lane for bicyclists as well. And so we've been aggressive on that one, and building trails and sidewalks for our residents. And right now we're working very closely with the school district on the state Safe Routes to School plan program. And that's a big deal. I actually went out as mayor and walked with them one day from the fire station all the way down to our elementary school to see what it's like where those kids are and where those kids are going to go and how they're going to get to school. What roads do they have to cross and what is the traffic like? And those are big issues for us. And they are big issues for the kids going out of whatever school are and trying to get get safely to school, which we want them to do. So that would be my response.
Thank you. And from Shoreview, Mayor Denkinger.
Well, we have quite a few, we have, I believe 100 miles of trails within Shoreview. We really have worked hard to develop a trail system and actually have a commission of volunteers, and their task is bikes and trailways. So they've been wonderful about proposing additional trails where needed. When you think about people potentially commuting elsewhere to their jobs out of the city and using bikes to get around. So they continue to provide us great guidance on where trails are needed. And so we have those. Our public transit is a bit of a gap, but the transit that we have, for example, we have transit up Rice Street that goes to our community center. But if you take a look at those buses, they're not heavily used. That could be because they only leave that desk, or you leave from there twice a day and come back twice a day. So it just might not work for people. And we do have another bus line in the city, and we've advocated for additional lines, but I understand it's hard to justify if the ridership, isn't there out in our area. However, I think about the development coming in Arden Hills for the Rice Creek Commons development, and it may be a bit of an easier sell if we have other communities that are looking for that in the future. So we do continue to work with the Met Council and talk to them about, advocating for additional public transit. But at this point, people who are not using their cars use the trails to get around for walking and biking, and provides access to parks. And I did also want to mention that I just heard about Vadnais Heights proposed trail around the Lake Vadnais area. And that's very exciting for our residents as well, because we do have a lot of walkers and bikers, and many are adjacent to Vadnais Heights around the lake. So that's a great, I think a great opportunity, not only for Vadnais Heights residents, but for Shoreviews as well.
Thank you. And from White Bear Lake, we have Councilmember Egberg.
Thank you. So several slices on that. We want folks to be able to have walkable neighborhoods. So when we redesign our streets, implement major construction of streets, we often are adding sidewalks. Mostly that is well received, occasionally not so much, but mostly is well received. Like others, we are working on trails, lake links, completing the portion through White Bear Lake, and that's all being well received. Perhaps the most notable transit conversation we had was the Purple Line, and that was a major issue. And we've had multiple views and different ways of thinking about that. It's been relatively quiet in the last year and a half, and really don't get a lot of feedback on that topic right now. In terms of other transit, I do ponder with all of the construction going on north of us, Hugo, up along Highway 61, all of the development that's going on, the impact of that on travel through White Bear on Highway 61 is becoming quite intense. And figuring out what planning needs to happen to accommodate movement of people going north and south on 61 that can't be accommodated on 35E. So those are the kinds of things, but all in all, it's not a massive public conversation. I don't receive a lot of email conversation otherwise from folks. The most local stuff is things like bikes and walking paths, and folks seem to be happy with that.
Thank you. That was an interesting topic, interesting questions, and how your cities interact with each other as well. I want to give a quick plug for submitting questions. So for all of you that are out there watching and following the discussion, we hope you'll submit questions. You can click the Q&A button in your Zoom control panel. I believe that's right, to submit a question. We have 2 questions I have, and then we'll move into audience submitted questions. So the next question is, what don't most people know about homelessness and affordable housing challenges in your city? And we are going to start with Mayor Kretschmer from Vadnais Heights.
I am so happy I get to go first on this particular question. This is a situation, a topic, I guess a crisis that I've invested a lot of time and energy in. Specifically around homelessness, I live in envy of cities like Maplewood and Roseville, who have really robust infrastructure and resources to deal with people in crisis, whether that's around homelessness or other issues that make their way into the public. Those of us who use the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office for our policing services have not yet developed a good system to manage things. So what happens and this is true everywhere around the country, homeless people tend to be moved on. If they are found, there was an encampment this summer in our city, which was on private property. It had to be broken up. The property owner did a lot of work to clear it out and make it less attractive to an encampment. But what happened to the majority of those folks that lived there was they just got moved on to another suburb or toward the city. Those are not solutions. So this issue requires a regional approach. And I'll be working with the Heading Home Ramsey group in the coming year and hoping to have some influence on the way the continuum of care within the county is developed and shared more broadly across the suburbs. There's also just a housing crisis. There is not enough housing, and it is really difficult to build affordable housing. In Vadnais Heights, about 500 of our 13,000 residents actually live and work in Vadnais Heights. It is very difficult for the people who staff most of our businesses to actually live in Vadnais Heights. And I'm sure that's true in other places as well. And these are really intractable problems that require a lot of time and attention and, more importantly, partnership. And I've been happy to find partners in some of the other local mayors and community resources. So it's something that I'll continue to work on. And but we've got to move it in a different direction. We're not doing a good job at this situation. Anyway.
Thank you.
But I won't.
When the little hand shows up, that means we're at the 2 minutes. So
sorry, I didn't see the little hand.
It's over. I can see it, but I don't know if you all can see it. But
I can't see it.
Oh, okay.
Be somewhere else.
Well, anyway, thank you. And the next one will be Mayor Brainerd from Mahtomedi.
Well, I would say that we haven't had the encampments that were just talked about, and that we've seen in the local news in Minneapolis and the movement of those individuals, and that's sad. Where we've got that in our communities, and I'm it's not visible here in Mahtomedi in terms of the homelessness issue. We don't have that encampments going on. We have a continuing need for affordable housing in the city. I think that's probably true of all of us. We have continued to work with the developers for affordable housing opportunities, but unlike a lot of places, the Met Council considers Mahtomedi 100% developed. We don't have space to put things. Where we come up with space is basically infill lots where somebody's owned a few acres of land and they want to put up a couple houses and sell the lots. We've been fortunate. We put Piccadilly Square in downtown, and that's a rental unit, and that's full. We just worked with through our tax and increment financing for a multifamily apartment unit that would provide lower rents for individuals and families on lower incomes. And that's completed. And I stopped there yesterday because they opened it in August. And to the point about not having available housing, you know, it's like you can build it and thou shalt come and fill it. And, you know, when I was there early on, when they opened, they had 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever it was, people signed up. But when I stopped the other day, they said we're at 80 to 90% already filled and the parking lot's full. And so I look at that and I think we've done some things. I wish we could do more. I'm not sure where we go with the space until we have some available where we could actually do something that would help on the affordable housing side. I would say that
We're about at time. Now
okay,
to see the hand, sorry. I hate interrupting you guys, but it's part of the
the hand's
deal.
not coming up on my screen. Sorry,
Yeah,
Nora.
so I'll just let you know, okay. Maybe I'll just hold my hand up and then we can.
Okay, there you go.
Sure.
How's that? New system. Okay, so Dick, you're
I'm
good?
finished.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Denkinger from Shoreview.
I think what people don't know about homelessness and homelessness in our city is that we do have some in our city. We don't have encampments, but we have had recently a situation where a building or an area that was being redeveloped, there was a homeless group living in one of the buildings that had not yet been torn down. And I've seen people walk through the city for the first time in 2023 where I knew you could tell that what they had, what they were carrying with them, what they owned. And I hadn't seen that previously. So we may not have encampments, but I know we have homeless people in the city. And we also have people who live in Shoreview who need affordable housing. And I'm not sure that all residents maybe are fully aware of that or feel that necessarily. So, and by affordable housing, sometimes we struggle with having people understand that that's not necessarily Section 8 housing or something like that. It's, you know, it's young professionals or young families. So we've been working very hard on some housing policies to protect renters, to preserve the affordable housing we have. We have a fairly large mobile home community here, and we've made available low interest loans so they can do repairs on their homes as well as other homeowners in the city that may have more traditional houses. And I think to Mayor Kretschmar's point, it's difficult to build affordable housing because land is expensive, construction is expensive. So we do have requirements by the Met Council, and we feel a strong commitment as a city to provide that. But oftentimes the cities will subsidize that through tax increment financing in order to, you know, reach our goal. We have now a requirement for new developments that they have 5% affordable housing, or a redevelopment of a certain size also have to have affordable housing. But it is a problem in our community, and I think that not everyone feels it or is aware of it or sees it.
Thank you. And next we have Councilmember Eggberg from White Bear Lake.
Yeah, so like others, we have a homelessness population. There is a population that is homeless in White Bear Lake. It's not large, it's not massively visible. If you know where to look, you can find it. There are some individuals who are monitored and well-known to our police department. We make wellness checks and try and support them in, but as one of my colleagues said, the typical solution is trying to move them on. I spend more of my time thinking about the affordability of our housing stock and the impact of pricing on in White Bear, perhaps in our other communities. A long-standing tradition is folks move away, go to school, perhaps start a family, and move back because they can't find another place that is as good to raise kids as the community they grew up in. So this whole sense of how do we accommodate that intergenerational opportunity. One of the things that I have been doing some thinking about is what happens? So all of South White Bear, portions of North White Bear were all developed in the 1960s. It was all farmland. It was all developed at the same time. It's now 30 to 40 years later. And those homes are going to be turning over in increasing amounts. What is that as an opportunity? How do we think about that as a generational shift that is worth paying attention to? And our council is beginning to have conversations and asking staff for research on affordability and opportunities that might exist for us. It almost sounds to me as though there might be an opportunity here for some regional conversation and collaboration to try and address this more systemically than community by community, but that's just a perception.
I think that's a good comment. It would be, obviously, you can collaborate regionally and with finances too. It helps. So thank you. And then we have Mayor Kozlowski from Stillwater.
Hey, thank you. And great points, mayors. You all brought up some really good issues. It's hard. I think the question is what most people don't know. I think in Stillwater, I think most people don't think we have homeless people. And we do. You don't see them. There's no encampments. Every once in a while, there'll be somebody sleeping in a car in one of our parks, but there's really no homeless population that we're aware of. But we do know, in working with our schools and our amazing local nonprofits like Valley Outreach, that we have people that it's more or less couch surfing. Right, they're living with a friend, a relative, somebody else for a short period of time. It's a lot of younger kids. It's a lot of students, people in our high school, sometimes in our middle school, that are struggling with a solid place to live. And what's really challenging for us is it's almost impossible to quantify this issue. Right, like how many and where are they and who are they? We have no idea. Right, the schools are probably the best resource for us in understanding the scope of the problem, but even there, the students are afraid to tell their counselors or their teachers that they're struggling, right? Because they don't want to get kicked out of school, they don't want to get moved to another school. We're right on the Minnesota-Wisconsin border, so there's a lot of kids that might be couch surfing in Wisconsin and still going to school in Stillwater and things like that. So it's really hard to quantify, it's really hard to identify, and so we lean on the county pretty much in its entirety to help us with that population. And they are building, I'm very happy and fortunate to just recognize that we're building an emergency housing shelter in Stillwater right next to the county building, right next door to the Washington County building. So we understand it's an issue. We're trying to find resources for it. But I think when we acknowledged and the community realized we were building this emergency housing shelter, a lot of people were like, why? Like, do we really, they didn't understand that we really had people that were in need. So I think the awareness is a good thing.
Thank you. Good discussion. Councilmember Edberg.
I'd like to just, the issue of homelessness is also connected to the issue of mental health and mental health care and services that are available. And that could be a whole topic by itself, but I think that just calling out the need for mental health and the availability of mental health services in our communities, I think is another topic deserving more conversation.
Thank you. Well, a very good discussion. We have one final question. Again, I want to encourage people, if you have, we're going to go to audience questions. So if you have a question, to submit that, you can click the Q&A button in your Zoom control panel. It is about 7:30, so we have about half an hour left. And we will move with the final question and then move into the audience questions. So this question is: crime on the rise in your city? And if so, in what way? How is it being addressed? And we're going to start that with Mayor Brainerd from Mahtomedi.
Thank you. I think that our city is fortunate that we do not have and have not had extremely violent crime. That doesn't preclude the fact that we do have break-ins. We do have cars being stolen. We do have cars downtown where people have come in the past and jacked them up and have taken out their various pieces on the underside of the car and right in broad daylight and took off. but we do work with the Washington County Sheriff. They're our police department, and we have a really good relationship with Washington County. We felt as a city we needed to add patrol this year, and so we've actually budgeted for another position with Washington County to work within our city. Now, we entered into a contract with Delwood, with Birchwood, Willerny, etc., to have patrol, and we allocate the cost of that out over the course of a year based on our population size. So it costs us a lot of money for a service that we provide, but we do get good service from Washington County. And I think if you look at what's happened with respect to looking 22 to 23, our violent crimes, our drug usage, our traffic stops, etc., have gone down. And then that kind of flies in the face of the complaints that I receive about people speeding in the community. But nonetheless, that's what we hear, and we do have a good program in place with Washington County. So that's how I'd answer that, Nora.
Okay, thank you. And then next we have Mayor Denkinger from Shoreview.
We are very fortunate. Our crime rate here, we contract with the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office or Department for our police, our public safety. And we're very pleased with their service and have a very good working relationship with them. Our crime rate here is very low compared to the region, and we consider ourselves very fortunate. We did have when catalytic converters were being stolen, we've had, we suffered with other cities, or our residents did, with that being more of an issue. That has definitely calmed down. I think that the number one or the top crime in our area is auto break-ins or thefts from within cars, whether at the dog park or sometimes even in people's driveway. But our crime rate is very low and continues to be low. That being said, we're very mindful of the fact that violent crime is higher in the metro area, and we are not that far out. We're a second ring suburb. So we do continue to monitor that and work with the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department to stay aware of what's going on within the Twin Cities and track, if we see trends in any respect coming out to our area, we'll react to that. But so far, our crime rate has been low and stayed stable.
Thank you. Councilmember Edberg from White Bear Lake, or Mayor Brainerd.
Nora, I just have a couple comments I'd like to add, if I might. One of them is that we have the sheriff appear at at least once a month at our city council meetings and presents a report. Our last city council meeting, we had the division commander, one of our officers who's here, and another person who's coming on board. They are on television. People see that. We also get a report from the sheriff that we can send out on our webpage and information to our citizens to try to help them understand that shouldn't leave their garage doors open, that kind of stuff. So we're providing those kinds of informational services based on what we're hearing back from the sheriff. I just wanted to let everybody know that.
Yeah, thank you. Next, Councilmember Edberg from White Bear Lake.
Yeah, thank you. Like my colleagues, crime does exist. The levels of violent crime are low. The crimes some of it's nuisance crime, some of it is theft and break-ins. So it does exist, all at relatively low levels, not comparable to what we might be reading in the newspaper for St. Paul or Minneapolis. And that's a good thing. Unlike the previous speakers, White Bear Lake has its own police force. We have a complement of 31 sworn officers. One of the issues that we're running into is that the supply of officers, and this is, I think, affecting all police forces, whether it's county sheriffs or city police forces, we're having a difficult time finding and retaining individuals to serve in those roles. And I just put that out there as a real world issue of those folks who do that work are in high demand. There are places that compensate better or are offer other amenities that our city can't, and so it's that becomes a major issue. I'm not aware that that is causing an increase in any kind of little crime wave or anything else, people trying to take advantage of that. But I would note that it makes it hard on the officers when they are trying to cover for when we are short-staffed, and that creates issues in our local police force.
Yeah, your police chief was at White Bear Lake Rotary and talked about that, and it is just a huge issue with everything that's going on in the world right now. But not as many police officers, or many people want to become police officers. So, thank you. And next we have Mayor Kozlowski from Stillwater.
Yeah, I mean, Stillwater, obviously, it's a very safe place to live. Our level 1 crimes, like the bad stuff, the felonies, those are actually half of what they were in 2021, right? So that stuff is going way down. The other stuff, the kind of the crimes of opportunity, like Mayor Brainerd brought up, people leaving their garage doors open, their cars unlocked on the street, you know, those are pretty flat. I mean, we don't have a lot of that in Stillwater either, but that's pretty flat year over year. There's no real increase in that. I think Kevin, you know, hit the nail on the head again. You know, hiring officers is a challenge. You know, I think we're all really fortunate. We've got a great police chief and Brian Mueller here in Stillwater. And Sheriff Starry at Washington County is amazing. He's a total rock star. We've got great all the chiefs surrounding Stillwater are amazing. The departments all get along really well. So I feel like we're in a nice little public safety bubble, honestly. And, you know, I wish the whole state and the metro could experience what we have out here. And I think a lot of the other mayors probably feel the same way, but more or less, you know, crime's flat, if not down overall. But I do worry about being able to hire and retain officers.
Thank you. And then we have Mayor Kratchmer from Vadnais Heights.
I don't think I have anything really new to add to this. Yes, crime rates are level and going down in some areas, and every person I know who is connected with law enforcement, that's almost the first thing they want to talk about is, where do I find more officers? It's a challenge.
Thank you. Well, good discussion. And
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I think our tax levy has been affected by rising public safety costs the last couple of years, and we've been very transparent with our citizens about it. That you know, I think the sheriff's department and all the other are trying to pay competitively and be proactive about that, because otherwise it becomes an issue of, you know, hiring, you know, from different, shorting everybody by, you know, offering more money. And, you know, very understandably, it's a very risky profession, but it has affected tax levies. And so hopefully, you know, that will level off in the future, because it sometimes is a challenge from a budget perspective, whether you contract for services or pay for them yourself. And I think the complaints I will hear about residents about crime is around speeding, because I think speeding rates are high. It's frightening for pedestrians and bike riders. And even our sheriff's department officers have talked about, they're frustrated too, but unfortunately it affects how many resources they have to direct towards speeding. And that's a comment or a complaint that I often hear from residents. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll take just a pause. We're going to go to the unscripted questions. So we're going to start with you, Mayor Denkinger from Shoreview. So
Okay.
I'm going to, League of Women Voters, I'm going to attempt to possibly combine a question, because instead of, we can't ask all these questions, you know, so there's one I think I can combine successfully. So you'll have to tell me, but there's two parts sort of.
Okay.
How can our young professionals get involved in city government or projects within the community, but also how can diverse populations get involved, and are they represented in your city's government and on citizens commissions. So sort of young people getting involved, as well as people that are diverse in their community, specifically up in your sort of where you are in the council or the commissions, that type of thing.
Sure, great question. I would love to see more young professionals and more diversity. And I think the first opportunity that comes to mind is on our committees and commissions. And there are some years where we get very few applicants, and then there are other years where we get many qualified applicants. But I would say that when you see openings, and those are, if you subscribe to our newsletter, we mention them as city council when we have openings. If you see an opening on the Human Rights Commission or the any of them, Bikeway and Trails, Economic Development, and I think it's a good idea. We have some people that only want to be, for example, on the Planning Commission, or only want to be on Human Rights, but we always have an option for 3. And I would say pick a couple, because you will get interviewed. And we had someone, we just did Planning Commission interviews the other night, and we had someone who had applied a couple of years ago come back again. And that time when that person applied, we had a great number of qualified candidates. We had a smaller pool this time. So that's a great way. That's how I got involved, was through economic development. And it doesn't take a huge amount of time. Most meetings are once a month. So for that, I would love to see more young people involved. In terms of diverse populations, I don't have a statistic, but we had we have a new council member who comes from a Hmong background. His family immigrated over when he was young. I don't know in the actual commissions themselves the percentage, but we can always use more diversity. So I would say the commissions, if you see an opportunity, we recently got involved in a Partners in Energy program with Excel Energy, where we're going to spend the next year evaluating opportunities for the city in various aspects of energy savings, et cetera. And we put out through our newsletter a call out to people to come and apply for that. So get on the newsletter so you see those, and please apply. And somebody can email me too if they have questions about that through the website.
Great, thank you. And next we would have City Council Member Edberg from White Bear Lake. So kind of if you can talk about both young professionals, diverse populations, and your makeup of your council's commissions and involvement.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to, I think the mayor was exactly right. A point of entry is in how are we being, not just asking people to contact us. I think we actually need to exert energy and go out and be more proactive in recruiting and engaging individuals to get involved in city government, and commissions are a wonderful way of doing it. One of the residents of my community has asked me, so could the League of Women Voters do something like a commissions academy for our region that might be a mechanism for inviting people to, and then let's be proactive in encouraging all people from all parts of all walks of life in our communities to get their feet wet by engaging in very real ways in whatever topics might be of interest to them. Waiting for more folks to show up or waiting for folks to throw their hat in the ring at election time, that's what we've done. It gives us what we've got. And at some point, I'm looking at 3 other guys on this panel, and at some point, demographics are going to come for us too. But it's like, how do we get more intentional about thinking about the creation of opportunity, the cultivation of talent for our local leadership? And I think intentionality needs to be a greater part of our thinking.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you look at what's making headlines right now, which is the city of St. Paul, very diverse and all women. It's kind of amazing, right? And so things are starting to change a bit, and intentionality.
Yeah.
So
Can I, Ms. Slawik, could I just, instead of I don't want to lose this thought. I forgot, we have a Citizens Academy that we offer every other year. And that is also a great way to get involved. That we post that, we send it out, advertise it. I'm trying to remember if we had one last year. I think this year we might be holding one. And so you can come and you come 1 day a week for 8 weeks, you go through public works, finance, you meet with all the department heads. And I think we have a group of up to 20. And then you also meet the city manager, the community development manager. So you learn a lot about it, and you meet all these people. At the end, the council and mayor meets with you as well on the last night. So that's a great way, because even if you were thinking of running for office, you're pretty well set to be able to speak to how the city runs. So, and I apologize for interrupting, but I didn't want to forget that. Very important.
Great idea, Citizen Academy. And next we have Mayor Kozlowski from Stillwater.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, tough questions. We do have a cool thing. It's probably like the Citizens Academy. I'd like to check that out, Sue, and learn more about what you guys do. We've got this thing called Leadership in the Valley that's put on by our awesome Chamber of Commerce in Stillwater. And it's not just young people, but it tends to be a little bit younger, where it's really a crash course in how government works, from the county to the state to the city to our school board, and how all the relationships work between all of those, governmental bodies. And so that's produced a whole, I think we're in our 3rd or 4th year, and it's produced, I think every class has about 30 people in it. And so it's creating like these hyper involved, volunteers that are kind of chomping at the bit to get involved. And it's been great. I can say, our commissions are really competitive to get on. I mean, we had our traffic safety commission had 1 seat, and we probably had 5 or 6 applicants, and one of them was a former nuclear sub captain, and the other one was the former commissioner of transportation for Massachusetts. It's like,
Wow.
These are really well qualified people that want to step up and serve our city. And so it's awesome. We've got an engaged community. We've got, people wanting to step up and volunteer, and they're really good people, and it's a lot of fun. On the flip side though, there's not a lot of turnover. The people that get involved, there's a lot. I mean, about half say, this is too much, I want to get back to my kids, soccer game or something. And the other half is like, this is so much fun, I'm never leaving, right? And so, and then they get so much experience, you don't really want to push them off with like term limits on a commission, right? It's like, but so it's kind of a double-edged sword. So that one's a problem. With diversity, that's a huge problem. I mean, on the racial side, Stillwater, we're not a diverse town. I mean, it is what it is. But we made the headlines recently with the strip, and the fact that we've only had like 2 or 3 women on our city council in the history of Stillwater. And right now it's 5 white dudes sitting up there, and honestly, I'm all ears for how to shape that. It's tough because all of our last 3 election cycles, everybody's been unopposed. I mean, nobody's running, so I mean, it's not like, people are running and losing, and I mean, nobody's running against anybody. So I don't know what that means. I mean, to me, I grew up in a house of women, a single parent mom. I think women are just smarter than dudes and go, I don't want to do that volunteer job, because it looks terrible. Like, I don't know. Like, it's tough. I'd love to see more diversity on our council, but I honestly don't know how to. I don't know how to, pull levers or push buttons in a way that would affect it. That's also not. That's going to be a little cringy either. So it's tough. But I would encourage people to run and step up. I mean, elections would be a lot more interesting if we had opponents. So.
Thank you. Interesting discussion, and I appreciate your candor on this topic. Now we have Mayor Vadnais Heights, Mike Kratchmer.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I agree completely with what everyone has said. I think the idea of a citizen academy to get people engaged in city government is a wonderful idea. I think it might be more powerful if it were regional, so that we could kind of share the costs internally around doing that. Might be better for everybody. I think another thing that I would love to get engaged in is really starting with the schools. We've been lucky enough this year to have lots of students attend our city council meetings. And I am hoping we can find a way to reach deeper into that pool and get people thinking about these things earlier. Because I guess that's where I started. That's where I got interested and excited about things like history and government, and the opportunity to really get involved, either as, you know, mayor for a day or a youth member of the council. There have got to be better ways to get people thinking about this earlier. I didn't really get engaged until I was past 60, which unfortunately are the people who have time. But it's an interesting challenge, and if you've got great ideas, share them with me. I want to get on board.
Well, thank you for those questions. Oh, we got feedback here. Okay. And so, you know, it is about 7:51. And so this may be the last question, depends on how long you each want to take with it. But
Nora, could I just make a comment on the last question that you asked the others?
yeah, Mayor Brainerd. Yes.
I've just offered that young people do come forward, and we've experienced that in Mahtomedi. We've had individuals recently who have sent me personal emails and asked how they could participate. They're tech savvy, and they know that we're out to try to improve communications with our constituents. So they offer up suggestions and how can we be of value. We've had individuals come to our city council meetings. We've had individuals who have offered the garden club to plant flowers by our fire department in their yard. So many respects, I look at it as we need to be proactive in our roles and reach out to the constituents that we know and want to understand, who are interested in government in general and the types of things we're involved in. And you'd be surprised. I think we all be surprised as to how many people out there, once we extend that branch to them and say, come on in, and they're willing to help us out. I think that we've had presentations before our city council, the student activities that we have in the community. We honored our hockey team this year at City Hall and had a proclamation. And those open up the doors for those to see that there is city government and it's beyond just City Hall that drive by every day on their way to school. So I think the idea that someone put out again about the relationship we have with our school system is a big one. And how do we get those students, whether it be there or in our situation with Century College, getting them involved in the activities that we have. You know, we know the average age of the student at Century College is probably 25 or 26 years old. Get them involved. We've got a lot of people. So I'll stop it there, Nora.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you were the last one on this panel, so sorry about that. And then
just a quick note, if I might, Nora. There are lots of other ways besides councils and commissions. We have lots of partners, partner organizations with our city. We have a green team where we've joined the Many Faces of White Bear Lake. Lots of those other services and committees, groups that contribute to the growth of our city. And so that is also a stepping stone. One of our council members started on Vlamo, which is the watershed. Yeah. So there are lots of ways to get involved if you find something that you're passionate about.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Last question, and then we're going to start with, I think it's going to be Councilmember Edberg, right? I have this right, because the last one was Mayor Denking, I think, first. So, you know, the topic of this was what keeps our local mayors awake at night. Last question, what haven't we covered that truly keeps you awake at night? And of course, we want this to pertain to city government. So what keeps you awake about city government? And if it isn't anything, well, you can share maybe some good things, but we will start with Councilmember Edberg.
Police shooting, both we've experienced police officers being shot by citizens. And clearly the concerns of police using their firearms in the course of their duties. And that's just that keeps me awake. George Floyd and the whole period of assessing what is the safety track record of our police officers and all of that kind of stuff. That was a big issue for me, and that messed with my head for a long time. I'm happy to report that in our city, we've not had the issues of police using their weapons. But this past year with one of our officers being shot in the line of duty, that'll mess with you. So that's one that keeps me awake.
Thank you. And due to time, we're gonna have to go to 1 minute answers. So I hope, sorry about that, but hope that's okay. Mayor Slawik.
Yeah, really the same as what Kevin said. We've got 6 schools in Stillwater. You know, the idea of an active shooter thing, my kids are in middle school and high school. You know, we've had some really close calls where, you know, the end result was everybody was okay, but that's the scariest thing is one of our first responders, you know, being in the line of fire, having to respond to something at one of our schools. I mean, that every time I see that on the news in another community, my heart just sinks. Like I can't imagine how I would I'd like to think I'm strong enough to manage our city through a crisis, but honestly, like that's the scariest thing for me to imagine is having to walk our community through some kind of tragedy like that. It certainly haunts me.
Thank you. And then we have Mayor Brainerd from Mahtomedi.
I would say that from my perspective, it's the unknown. It's what is it that we think we've planned for, and all of a sudden we haven't. We find out that we haven't planned for that, and so that strikes me as something. But I think specifically, it's these emergencies. We run a police and an EMT service out of Mahtomedi, and I worry about it hasn't been brought up yet tonight. The law enforcement did, but we can't recruit firefighters, and it's a big problem. How do we deal with firefighters and EMT and provide the services? And in our community, we had well over 1,000 calls for our ambulance service this past year. And we're trying to provide the service that we can and trying to figure out how we continue to provide that service to the citizens who, quite frankly, have come to expect it. So that's what keeps me more awake, is how do we do that? When we have an emergency, are we going to be able to react in a timely way?
Thank you. And Mayor Denkinger from Shoreview.
You know, it's interesting listening to these because at first I was thinking this year what keeps me up at night, and it was managing to the tax levy, knowing some people are struggling financially and to stay in homes, etc. But I have to say, after listening to the 3, what does always kind of in the back of my mind is to Mayor Brainerd's point, the unknown. You know, we have a community center with a couple of pools, and, you know, we've never had any very, very serious incidents there, you know, but you always have some kids that sometimes struggle or get in trouble in the water. And I have to say, it's that unknown of public safety, whether it's in the schools or just in general. Would you have an incident that you perhaps couldn't have even imagined would happen? So I think overall, that's what I would have to agree with the first 3.
Did I miss you, Mayor Kretschmeyer, and from Vadnais Heights?
You did, but that's okay.
Well, do you want to?
You caught it in time. I'm still here.
We can do a quick, with the help of one of you that chatted. If you could, can you answer? Then we'll go to Stephanie McNamara for a wrap up.
Sure. You know, I agree. Public safety is so critical, and the approach I like to take is that the inoculation for all of us is community. And if we could all learn to communicate better and connect on a personal level and with our neighbors, we'd have less kind of friction and stress. And maybe some of the things that do turn into tragedies will be recognized earlier. But yeah, that's what keeps me awake at night too.
Well, I want to thank all of you. You were fantastic, and turn it over to Stephanie McNamara for the wrap up.
Thank you, Nora.
Thank you. And thank you to our moderator, Nora Slawik. You did a great job. And to all of our elected officials here and panelists for sharing your thoughts. Lots of fascinating insights that you shared with us tonight. And I believe we've got this all recorded for later viewing too.
Great.
I'd also like to thank all of our attendees that joined us tonight. I think we had close to 50. And I think there was a lot of good information that came out tonight. There is another great program coming up March 13th and 14th on plastics in the environment. We have a guest speaker and lots of local and legislative information to share. Please sign up through our website. Information is available there. League members can look for more information on the February book discussion in the Fairfax. And have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all.
Good to be
Have
on the
a good
panel.
night.
Thank you.